Okay, our meeting is called to order for the Audit Committee.
Hit the center button. There we go.
And the very first order of business is we're going to do our roll call.
Madam Chair, you do have a quorum.
The next item of business is we need to set the agenda.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do you need us to vote here? Okay. We're just going to do verbal votes tonight, so you don't have to vote on your screen since we're having some problems. Motion carries. Next item of business is the approval of the minutes as sent out in your board packets from the June 15th, 2017 Audit Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item of business is if there is any public input for items on today's agenda. Okay, we don't have any public input. The next item of business is our new business for this meeting. And right now we're going to turn the meeting over to Ingram, Overholt, and Bean to talk to us briefly about the audit for the school board. Come right on up. Can she?
Right.
You're right there I apologize. Thank you. Okay, so just to be clear to the committee, kind of about what we're here to do as an audit committee, just as a reminder from back when we looked over the full audit for the county, we need to look at independence, competence, and completeness as a committee and make sure we address any questions that we have for Ingram, Overholt, and Bean. We've all had the audit report. We've had an opportunity to review it for several months now. So if you just... Yes. Before you get started with talking to us a little bit about the audit process, do you care to introduce yourself to us and tell us how you interact with Ingram?
I'm Karen Edwards. I'm the audit partner for Ingram, Overholt, and Bean. I've been there 30 years. And so we've audited the schools probably for that long.
Thank you.
Do you have questions or do you want?
No, I can speak to Miss Edwards. She did my peer review, and I don't know that she did that when I used to, or remembers that, but when I used to do attest services, I can speak very highly of her and working closely with her personally. She's also done my father-in-law's peer review, something we have to do as public accountants, so you go right ahead.
Well, in the June 16th audit report, the schools are on a regulatory basis. They're guided by the Tennessee Internal School Manual, which is not consistent with generally accepted accounting principles. So their reports are presented on a regulatory basis. Cash, receipts, disbursements, and they go by all the rules in that internal school manual. They have rules for writing receipts, making deposits, writing checks. The manual covers everything from A to Z. And we go to the schools and audit at the schools with usually the bookkeepers and the principals are both there. I know many years ago, the schools would box up everything and bring it to somebody's office, and it's a little hard to do an audit that way. So we find it much better to go to the school, and if we have a question, there's somebody to answer it. Do you have any questions on the 16 audit?
I think we probably do. I'll get us started and then I'll turn it over to some of our other committee members. One of the first things I do as an auditor is I flip through to your findings on your internal controls. That's just flip straight to that. So I'm all the way to the very back of the report for those of you who have hard copies in front of you. And I like how the findings are presented. They're very straightforward. There was one that was a little bit concerning to me, and it was the one on cash. Don't really know that you handled that piece of the finding, but it's where they're writing checks out to cash. Is this a recurring, for me being an old auditor, one of the things that concerns me is a recurring finding that repeats itself year after year.
This was cleared up. We've already finished the audit for 17, and we didn't find any instances of the Booster Club doing that.
Excellent.
A few years ago, the Booster Clubs also came under this internal school manual. They have to operate just like the school does. They can either operate outside the school, or they can choose to have their Booster Club inside the school. It's done both ways at some of the schools. But this particular finding was on a Booster Club that was outside the school.
Well, it's refreshing to me to see that you all look at those type of things, because they do get overlooked pretty easily within schools.
The Booster Clubs are required to turn in their monthly bank statements to the schools so the schools can look at them, and also semi-annual reports that they look at.
Excellent. More questions from the committee?
Who at the school looks at that? Is it the principal, the bookkeeper? Who's monitoring? Who at the school is monitoring the Booster Club?
Both the bookkeepers and the principal. Usually it starts with the bookkeeper, and if there's something unusual, she'll get the principal involved, but usually both.
Okay.
And they initial off that they've looked at those reports.
About how many hours do y'all spend in the total school audit?
There's usually 2 of us at a school for maybe a half a day. So that's about an 8-hour day.
Okay, times 29 schools, or yeah, 29 schools?
22, I think.
22 schools, rather. And then there's obviously the time spent doing the report,
Yes.
which is a catalog. One of the findings I didn't quite understand, I think it was at one of the Eagleton schools. It said that field trip, the way I read it was cash was given to students while they were on a field trip, but all the students didn't sign for the cash. I'm not familiar with that. I've never seen that, not that it's wrong or right, I'm just saying I've never seen that done where kids were given cash on a field trip. Is that what was happening?
What was happening was they were going somewhere and they were going to eat or do something, and the teacher requested cash to give $10 to each student. But she should have also had them sign that they received that money. And that has been, all the schools do that.
Okay. Does that happen very often where they go on stuff and the kids get cash? I've just
No,
never seen it at the stuff. Not that I've, any of the schools I've ever audited, I've never seen that done that way.
Not too often, but sometimes it just has to be that way. I don't know where this particular field trip was, but sometimes they go places and the kids can get their own food. And
I guess they can spend 10 or not spend it, right? I guess once it's given to them, they can do what they want with it.
yeah,
Okay.
easier than trying to use a credit card to buy
Well,
food for all those
yeah.
kids.
I just had never seen that before. They wouldn't give us any money back in my day when we were in school. But we took our lunch. Anyway, that's off the point. That's all I have. Thank you, Karen.
Okay.
Did I understand you to say there were 2 auditors, 2 different auditors at each school for a half a day? Okay.
At the larger schools, the middle schools and the high schools, there could be as many as 4 at the high school. And they're there almost all day.
I'd just like to add to what Mr. Gowan said. Yeah, back when I went to school, we could have taken a pretty good road trip for $10.
More questions from the committee? Andy, do you have any? All right. Let me see if... Yes, sir.
The audit for this year, the 17 audit?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we've not seen it, though. I was trying to save you a trip from coming back. We'll just have to have you come back at a later date and discuss it since it's not on the agenda. Anything any finding that we would need to, you think we need to know about now?
No, I think all the findings for 16 were cleared up.
No repeat fines, no 2 years
Well,
fines?
except we were still having trouble with the booster clubs getting monthly bank statements and reports in. We go to the schools in July, and sometimes the booster clubs haven't gotten their bank statements yet. But the schools have decided to ask them to do the report through the end of May, because technically school's over before May's over.
Yeah,
So I don't think that'll be a problem from now on.
okay. But we'll probably have you come back in another meeting or two when we, you know, I didn't think, if we'd have known, we could have probably covered two, but anyway. It's
That's
not on the
fine.
agenda, so we can't do it.
Exactly right. Are there any ways that we as a committee can help you as an auditor? That we can better serve you in what you're trying to do? Or are you successful in getting what you need and everyone's complying and works
If I
with
think of something, I'll let you know.
you? Sounds good. Well, the thorough audit job, we appreciate it. I think the findings Lee and I both found very thorough.
I think since the Blount County Schools, they use school funds online, and we have access to that program, and we can go in and look at any time at how things are going. So it's a really great program.
Excellent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Now I think at this time we may have a representative here from the school board. Is that correct? Come right on up, please, and introduce yourself. I've got the mic still on.
My name is Troy Logan. I'm the fiscal administrator for Blount County Schools. I've been there going on 17 years.
Excellent. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how the operation goes and how you work with the auditor, so we just have a better understanding, and then we'll open it up for questions from the committee.
The school bookkeepers at each school have some dotted line responsibility to me. I'm responsible overall for the transactions and the activities that happen with school funds at the school. So the principal is the direct responsible person at that school over those school funds, but ultimately if something goes wrong or they're not doing something right, that's usually when I get involved. Karen mentioned the software that we use is a web-based accounting package for that I have access to, one of my staff has access to, who is one of my staff is a point of reference and contact for help, questions, information that they may need, that the bookkeepers may need for help in different things. Both of us have access, as the auditors do, to that system. We can pull reports, we can look at account history, transaction reports, anything like that. So we can look at any transaction that's in there, we can see by school. So I do a little of that monitoring. We do some occasional training with the bookkeepers, where we'll just go over some things that are common or not so common and reminders and that kind of thing. Last year we had, as you noted in some findings, some issues around some booster clubs. We followed that up with some very specific training for the high schools and the middle schools, which is where most of your booster clubs are. We brought in booster club presidents and treasurers, and we went through some very specific things that they can or can't or should and should not be doing, and went through those, covered those findings and some other things to try to keep that from happening again. That's about it.
That's excellent. Do you have any trouble with compliance after going through all that training that you're not able to address?
Not really. There was a repeat finding that she mentioned related to bank statements and monthly reports at the end of the year. The bank statements for all the booster clubs and PTOs go directly to the school first, and they're mailed to the bookkeeper, school bookkeeper, principal. They open them and look at them first, and then they make a copy and then give the original to the treasurer of those organizations. So I think what was happening there when the audit's being scheduled and done, the June bank statement wasn't there yet. So I didn't really, it just hadn't gotten there yet. The semi-annual reports, they're required to submit financial reports semi-annually at the end of the first semester. And we were telling them at the end of the second semester, they were completing those at the end of June, and they weren't getting them until July or even August. Well, the audit's already been done. And so they, as Karen said, they've backed that up, and that we're requiring them to turn those in right after school's out in May. So that'll help with that.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over for questions to the committee.
Okay.
Do I have any questions from our committee members?
The booster clubs, could you help explain the hierarchy and how that works? Do they control their own money, or does the principal have any say-so over what money's spent, or no?
They are a separate entity, but let me back up just a little bit. About several years ago, 5, 6 years ago, the state felt like there was a lot of issues and a lot of problems with those organizations, booster clubs, PTOs, parent organizations, PTAs. And so legislators drafted and implemented a new law that was financial control related around those organizations, and basically said, booster clubs, PTOs, you will comply with these financial controls and procedures, and you work with the schools in implementing and making sure that you execute those things. What we have done on our end is try to monitor and make sure that they do some of those things, that they have to adopt bylaws that have very specific financial procedures that they've adopted. This business with the bank statements, the schools need to review those and look at those, but they're a separate entity. Ideally, they're working with a school principal and working together to determine and decide how best to spend those monies for the benefit of whatever kids or group that they're representing and trying to help. But the principal or I can't necessarily tell them exactly what to spend their money on. But the principal does have, the school does have, final authority to allow them to operate. So if they don't do what they're supposed to do, if they don't comply with what anything that they're required to comply with, if the principal says you shall not operate, you're done. And they can have them close their account. That money reverts to the school if they've got any money in their account.
The only other thing I've seen on here is the post-dating, well, that's not the right word, but writing the POs after the invoices have come in, and I'm assuming that's because you didn't know the price of what's happening. And I've seen that in other businesses, and you just got to stop that. That's hard to do, but yeah, just tell them they can't do it.
It is, and you're exactly right. And then I have seen that in the past over the years, that finding.
Do I have more questions? Mr. French, do you have any? No. Okay, I'm just going to read something because we have findings in this report and we don't in the full county report. This is just recommended rules for the audit committee to follow, so I just want to make us aware as a committee what our obligation is in the event there are findings in a report. This is straight out of good business practice, that based on the committee's review and observations, county management appears to be taking sufficient or insufficient, which I don't think that to be the case here today. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Steps to correct any identified internal control weaknesses and any material and/or significant audit findings. If the audit findings, which are what we have here, not deficiencies, is that correct, Karen? There's nothing, okay. If audit findings are repeat findings, which we have learned today, most of those have been cleared up with the exception of one, the committee should make a determination if the county management appears to lack the desire or the ability to correct those issues. I don't feel like that's the situation here today. Does anyone feel like, based on the audit findings, that we have a situation we need to pursue further action as a committee on this? I feel like sufficient steps are being taken, but we're a group. Okay. So I appreciate both of your all's time in coming out and talking to us and as an organization. And so as a committee at this time, based on moving forward with the findings and Ms. Edwards sharing that those are being cleared up and corrected on the current year audit. I don't think we have any further business on this year's school audit, and we're already ready to look at the next one. The next order of business is for us to discuss the internal control procedures that were presented at the last meeting. And if there is no further discussion, if you reviewed it as sent out in your board packet, then we have a motion that also went in that board packet that we are recommending to the county commission to adopt a resolution acknowledging as an addendum, so in case there's any change in it, they don't have to redo the resolution, that will adopt the policy as sent out in the board packets, as prepared by the finance department. Have I totally confused you?
Madam Chairman, the only question I have is the list of questions that was presented to us. And in one of the answers, in one of the answers, it was incorrect, what I could see. I don't know if that's part of the policy or not. Now I can't find it. The question was, who in the county had keys to, here it is. Well, who in the county had keys to the commission room? And it lists the chairmen of several different committees, and it lists the beer board chairman, and it lists the education committee chairman, and that is not correct. As I am the chairman of both those committees, I don't have a key to this room, and I don't want a key to this room, but I don't know if that's part of the policy or what that question involved.
So do we want to go ahead and recommend
I'll just correct that one statement.
with that one
and- yeah,
change?
And
that
go
fair
from
enough?
there, yeah.
Are there any other changes that other committee members had that need to be changed before we take it? Okay. Andy, you're in agreement as well. I'm so sorry, I can't see. Okay. All right. The next thing we need to do then, with the exception of making the changes on the keys as indicated by Ron, then we are ready to make a motion as presented in the board packet on the agenda that commission will adopt the resolution of the internal control policy. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have no other business except for to discuss our next meeting where we need to review the hospital audit. That's the last audit that we have not taken a look at. I understand that audit should be released soon, and not tonight, but later on, let's communicate back to the county when we could meet as a committee. In November is what I'm thinking, so we'll think about that next meeting, consider it in November to review the hospital audit. We'll get that out to you. The only other thing that I need to bring to everybody's attention, just a reminder like we do at every meeting, is that if you have any fraud issues that you need to report fraud, waste, or abuse to this committee, it goes through the state website. And you can go out to the State of Tennessee website and report any fraud. And if there's anything that needs to come to our committee, they'll communicate it to us in that venue. Our meeting is adjourned.